How'd you like that bar?
I loved it. That was awesome.
That bar's pretty cool, right?
It felt
Faces,
good on my
right?
shoulder. Felt good on the shoulder.
What's it? The Cadillac bar, right?
Oh, I thought you were talking about faces again.
Oh yeah, that place. That place was tight.
Ah, no.
There's nothing wrong with faces.
I'm gonna have to swing by there later.
Swing it by.
Swing it. But yeah, we're good to go.
All right, yeah. So just got done with a little training session. Hit up some little bit of bench pressing. Training with my boy Mike over here. Did some Cadillac bar benching. But anyway, I ran into Mike going to Sane Strength. Freaking awesome gym. Like that's the craziest gym
One of the best. I love that place.
I've ever been to. I've never seen anything quite like that. And they, for some reason, keep it under wraps. I'm not sure why, but you walk in there and you're just like, oh my God, they have every amazing piece of equipment that you could possibly imagine. I mean, how many barbells do they even have there?
They've got a whole row. It's pretty incredible. You get that Charlie and the Chocolate Factory effect as soon as you walk in. It's you out from the outside, you can't believe it. It doesn't look like much, and you walk inside, and all of a sudden, boom, 30-foot ceilings and machines as far as you can see, and probably close to 50 different barbells. It's insane.
Mike is the guy that you see at the gym, the older guy that you see at the gym that mentors everybody, that takes like a half an hour, 45 minutes in between all of his sets. And that's how I got talking to him. I saw him at the gym, and he was training and stuff like that, and we just got chatting, and you followed, you've seen Bigger, Stronger, Faster, and so we got
Awesome.
some conversation about that, and then you told me you're a police officer, and you shared some really cool stories about that, and so I thought, hey, it'd be great to have somebody on that's a family man, a former police officer. You have some cool stories kind of tied into all that. And somebody that's just out there training every day, trying to stay in shape and trying to stay jacked, trying to stay tan just like the rest of us.
Absolutely. I mean, it was an incredible experience. I mean, Bigger, Stronger, Faster definitely resonated. It hit really hard. I love that movie. And then to see you walk into Sand Strength one day and walk right by, and you smiled, and I'm like, that's Mark Bell from Bigger, Stronger, Faster. And it was pretty cool. And then you made the time to say hello, and you were humble, and you went on, and I was watching you lift, and I'm like, dang, the guy is strong. And so afterwards, and then you did a seminar there, and everything you said resonated. I mean, there was your family man and where your background, and it was interesting, and I had a lot of fun, being there and asking you a couple questions, and then, I saw you a couple times more, and you're in there, and it was I figured, I'm going to go up, I'm going to strike up a conversation with you.
You have 6 children, I think you said?
6 kids.
Wow.
Damn,
Yeah.
dude. How do we avoid that?
Yeah, I wish I could figure that out.
That sounds like a lot, man. What's the age range on that?
So my youngest is 11. So I've got 11, 17, 18, 21, 23, and yeah,
Damn.
so there was a span there. It was like
You
every.
deserve like an award for that.
Nah, my wife,
Seriously.
my wife does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then how long were you a police officer for?
20 years. 20 years with the Sonoma County Sheriff's Department. It was a pretty interesting journey. I mean, definitely. My goal was to do 30 years, and that was always something that when you're everything you do, you start off with a job. I think everyone starts it with hey, I want to change. I want to help people, and it was a great profession. I was an athlete prior to that. Went to the San Jose Junior College, played a little bit of football.
Oh,
Realized, hey, you know what? You have some talent, but you're not Division I talent. So you better start looking for something. And law enforcement, I had a good background. Saw there was testing process coming up. Like, I'm going to go for that and give it a shot. So it was interesting.
Yeah, how did you start? Like, what was the kind of thought process that got you into it?
What really started for me was I love sports. I had aspirations when you're younger. You're thinking, man, I'm going to play in the NFL, or I'm going to play in the Major League Baseball.
Yeah, we all are, right?
Yeah, yeah. And so then when you realize it's like, there are some incredible athletes out there, and you're just not at that level. And it's a realization. And then at that point, I'm like, okay, well, career-wise, what do you want to do? Wrench on cars? Do you want to do something honorable? And for me, I saw law enforcement as, a profession. I'm like, you know what? You can help people. And to be honest with you, like as a younger person, everybody's experienced, I think when you're younger and you're small, bullying. And for me, it was like, okay, now you know what? I'm a little bit bigger guy now. I'm 6'4", 230 pounds, and I could represent the little guy. And it was nice. It was like I can go out there and make a change, come across people, help people, people who are less fortunate, who need somebody to, look out for them. And so I went ahead and applied for it. Went to the police academy. It was actually it was a great experience.
You seem like a really reasonable guy, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you on the show and get into some conversation with you, because I think in today's age of what's been going on over the years really, and what's been highlighted more recently, it just seems chaotic, and it seems like it's a lot of people are against the police. A lot of people are, anti-police. A lot of people are in favor of defunding the police and things like that. And I don't know how you were, in your career. I wasn't there, but just from talking to you, I'm assuming that you were the kind of person that would want to communicate as much as possible until that was no longer an option.
Absolutely. And you know what? In this opportunity that you're giving me right here, I can give people from the law enforcement perspective. I'd say 99% of the guys that I worked with all have a great heart, family men, want to go out there and make a difference, a positive difference. I mean, you see a lot of us, we actually, in our spare time, we coach kids in basketball, coach kids in football, the police athletic leagues that we're involved in with football for youth leagues. I mean, we spend what little time we have after work helping the youth. A lot of that doesn't get put out there, right now, and I want to say not for good reason, but unfortunately there are some knuckleheads wearing that badge that shouldn't be wearing that badge. And I think if more law enforcement took an attitude like, let's look at everybody's perspective. You know what? It's not us against them. You see you see logos, the blue line logo. I'm not a big fan of drawing a line in there. There shouldn't be, that line should be erased. There shouldn't be not against the blue line thing, but why is there a line in the sand, so to speak? Why can't we as a community get together, have sit downs and figure out how can we do our job better, you know what I mean, to not have the negative feelings that we're experiencing right now. And it's unfortunate there are a few knuckleheads that are out there that are ruining it for the majority.
I'm curious because you mentioned that I don't know if you meant it that way, but you said that when you started the job, you started to help people. Did that at all, did the feeling of what you were doing change throughout your career, or was that the main sentiment that you had throughout, and you felt that way the whole time you were working for 20 years?
That's a great question. And I'll be honest with you, probably halfway, let's say maybe halfway through, you're handling, let's say on a daily basis, 10 to 15 calls of service. So you're getting dispatched to certain calls. And after a while, it starts to wear on you. And if you don't have an avenue to get rid of that stress, it starts to build up, and it can spill over into your family life. It can spill over into your work life. And I think for me, finding the gym was a great outlet, to get rid of that stress, so I could maintain that mindset, like what you were saying. It's like, hey, don't forget why you're wearing that badge. Protect and serve. I mean, that means a lot. It meant a lot to me. And can you get callous? Can you get, I don't want to say complacent, but can you get to the point to where, how can I put it? You lose your focus, you lose your way, and then where you can become disgruntled, and you're like, man, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. This isn't, after 10 years in, this is a lot different than that bright-eyed, academy.
I'm going to help everybody, yeah.
Right. So things changed. And it did change for me. But I'd have to say having kids and coaching with kids and talking to my wife and working out and meeting people, you can kind of reset. You have to reset yourself. You have to actually go back and say, you know what, why did you take this job? And if you don't like this job, you better get out. But a lot of people feel trapped, and a lot of officers feel trapped.
Having kids is a huge change, I think, because you'll hear about, your kid goes to school and then so-and-so is a problem in the classroom, and your kid kind of reports to you say, yeah, how was school? Like when they're young. When they're older, they don't talk to you much. Mm-hmm. But when they're young, they tell you this guy, is doing this to other kids on the playground or whatever. And that's when you sometimes have to explain to them, and you have to, not that you're trying to make an excuse for that particular child, and you don't know what they're going through, but just say, you know, a lot of times I had to tell my kids, that kid's home, there's something's probably wrong at home, and that's why that kid is, you know, throwing the football as hard as he can at other kids' head, or whatever the thing is, you know, whatever this thing is. So I think it gives you perspective into, like, everyone's home life is, not that you don't know that already, but it gives you a little bit more perspective into everyone's home life is just way different. And even when your home life is good, you got some people that just, whatever reason, are lashing out. They have, maybe they're just being like neglected. Maybe their home life isn't that bad, but they're just, their parents aren't able to be there as much as they'd like, or something like that.
100%. And what you just said about perspective, and it's like you don't know what that person's going through. You know what I mean? And you're coming across this person, and they see the badge. A lot of people, when you pull people over and you can see them shaking, and I'm thinking, I'm just pulling you over, you know.
I get really nervous. I don't know why. I've never had anything crazy happen. I mean, well, you know, I did see my oldest brother get arrested a bunch, and I've seen him, you know, like, get arrested pretty forcefully and stuff. So I guess I do have some, but you know, he made a lot of bad choices. You know, so I kind of know now, like, if I just kind of do what I'm told, that there shouldn't be a problem, but not everybody feels that way.
No, and sometimes that's when things go sideways, you know. And I could tell you, when I used to start my shift, I'd open up my locker, I'd put my vest on, I'd have a picture of my family right there in the locker room, and I knew what I was doing. I was like, okay, I'm gonna come home tonight, see my kids. I'm gonna go out, try and make a difference in my community, keep the community safe, try and get the knuckleheads off the street. That there's some monsters walking around out there. A lot of people don't realize that, but if you think about who's being housed in San Quentin and some of these scary, you know, we're talking, you know, from murder to, you know, hurting kids, and, you know, the pedophile things and so forth. And when we hit out that street, you know, we want to make a difference. We want to make a positive impact. We don't go out. I mean, I can speak for myself, but some of the guys who I worked with, you want to go out there and make a positive impact on the community. And I'd have to say 99% of the guys that I work with feel that way. It's unfortunate there is 1%. And I mean, I wish there was a way to get rid of that 1%, because they make it so difficult for the rest of us to, you know, do the job. And I've heard other people say, hey, why don't you, you know, tell on them, get them out of the department. And that's, you know what, I mean, it's a great thing, but in reality, you might need that person backing you up on a call. And the last thing that I want is somebody, because I've actually had it happen to me, you know, not back me up on a call, you know, and I don't go home. So it's a difficult, I mean, it's not an easy as, hey, going in and, you know, telling the captain or the sheriff, we need to get rid of this
It'd
guy.
also be tough if the person that you're talking about was like overly aggressive. You know, you saw that a couple times, but you don't really know what they walked into or walked in on. And I'm sure they're going to justify and kind of lie to you.
Right.
Say, oh, they were doing this, they were doing that. And you don't really, you don't really know.
And
you don't want to like out somebody, you know.
it's a tough
right?
position
Yeah,
that you're
hard.
in. But I think right now in today's climate and the way it is, you almost have to take that step.
Yeah.
I think other law enforcement at this point, if you don't want your job to be that difficult, like to where it is right now, where there's a target on you, then you need to pull that guy aside and say, hey, you're making it hard on all of us. Knock it off. No, I don't think enough of that goes along. And there's reason for it, but I think now that a lot of the older guys are retiring out and you have a new breed coming in, some of the guys that you saw at the gym who I train with, and giving them some perspective and saying, hey, let's make a difference. Let's get our department to a point to where you can go up to someone and say, hey, I don't know what's going on in your personal life, but it's carrying over, spilling over on the street. Let's not do that, because you're going to make it hard on everybody. You know, you make a mistake out there and it could cost someone's life. And trust me, that's not why you go through all those. The hiring process is long. It's about a year long to get hired. And then, I mean, they go
even back when you,
it was almost a year.
30 years ago or whatever.
Yeah. And what they did was they went all the way back to my grade school. They talked to some grade school teachers. They talked to your neighbors. Everywhere you've lived, they talked to your neighbors. They want to know what type of person you were. So how some of these guys fall through the cracks is it's kind of scary because, I mean, they actually do a thorough background. You have to take a polygraph test. You do a psychological exam.
Well, I agree with you right there that it is scary because that would kind of imply that the people that are hiring are allowing that to fall through the crack. You know, they're like, ah, that's not that bad. That's not, and you know, it's like, you know, they need to be audited and checked themselves, kind of. So then it gets to be a difficult situation.
Yes, I agree with you. I think it's something that it's not an easy process. Some people do slip through the cracks, and then once you're in, it's difficult to get rid of somebody. I mean, the peer pressure is good. I mean, we had, you know, a lot of law enforcement agencies, they click up, and you have, I mean, not to, you know, you want to talk about Oakland PD. I mean, Oakland PD has a Black Police Officers Association, a Latinos Police Officers Association, and it's kind of, why is there so many separate associations? It's like, why isn't there just one police officer association? You guys are carrying a badge. You're there to protect and serve. And I don't want to sound like I'm bashing law enforcement. It's not. I mean, it gave me the house, you know, that I have right now. It afforded me, you know, the opportunity to coach my kids and have a profession that I felt at the time was, you know, hey, this is an honorable profession. So, I mean, I like it, but there definitely needs to be some changes, and hopefully some, you know, quickly.
Is there anything in place for, you know, the police officer that has been in, you know, service for like over 10 years, and they can see like, okay, his morale's kind of going down a little bit. Is there anything in place or any protocols to help try to like bring morale of somebody back up? Or is it just like, hey, this is what you signed up for, suck it up?
It's a little of the latter, unfortunately. It is. And that's something that I was a field training officer, a defensive tactics instructor, and I'm out on the street, you know, 10 hours a day, and you're handling your calls for service. You're focused on what you're doing. And when you have a call for service that you might need assistance with, sometimes you're praying that a certain person doesn't show up to that call, and that's a bad feeling. Because you're like, you know, this person's going to escalate this call, you know, and you're like, oh man, you cancel that assistance. I don't need. I'll handle it myself. And so, but as far as monitoring people, morale, the frontline supervisor would be your sergeant, and he's handling. You know, when you sit in these briefings, you see some of these police shows, cops and so forth. They're standing behind a desk, and they've got 20 people in there that they're speaking to, and I have to say, a lot of them know their people who you're working with, because you're doing this for years, and you can read people. And you know, we've all been to schools. Like I went to that interrogation school that I was telling you about, and you learn about neurolinguistics. You should be able to pick up on, you know, the people who you're supervising. Like, you know, are you having a rough time? Maybe bring some people in and say, hey, what's going on? You know, check on. You should be able to read that, and then. You know, as far as the administrators above those, like lieutenants and captains, a lot of them are shuffling papers and dealing with complaints, you know, so forth. But it really falls on that sergeant.
So there's no like, I don't want to say liaison, but like sort of like in the NBA has the Players Association. They have somebody that the players can go to speak to, you know, management and whatnot. Is there anything even close to that, or is it just you just talk to your superiors?
You know, that's actually a pretty good point you just brought up. There are police officer associations. Like the department I work for, the Sonoma County Sheriff's Office, has an officer association, and they have a president, and there's officers in between, and you can actually go and talk to them. And I think it comes down to self-evaluation. Each officer, sometimes you get caught up in it, and I'm going to say I'm guilty of it too. You'll be doing the job, and you're trying to make ends meet. You're trying to keep everybody happy. You're worried about what if someone says something, and you know, you're really at this point you're just like, hey, I want to just, you know, go out and do my job, be left alone, and then you get caught in this run, and you're doing it and doing it and doing it, and then at some point it'd be nice to just say, hey, how's it going? How are things going? How's stuff going on with your family? You know, something like that. Just a checkup, like a little checkup to say, hey, how are things going on? You know, how's the job treating you? Is there something that we can do maybe a little bit different? You know, we're hearing, but unfortunately there's not. You know, your police officer associations, they usually help you with complaints. If someone's complaining, you have to go to them and you ask for it, like say, hey, this is what's going on. So, but I mean, and it's a position where you're actually carrying a gun. You can you're making life and death decisions. I think it's that important. If you're going to issue someone that firearm, and you go through the screening process, and you give them this great training at the academy, and you're learning on the fly. Like, you learn a lot. That I could tell you, when I got in that patrol car, I was off the training program. It was my first day out there. It's scary. It's pretty scary. I mean, I'm 6'4", 230 pounds, and I'm like, this is kind of scary. I'm out here by myself. I have a firearm. I might have to actually use it. And that's, in my head, I'm like, man, I hope that situation never comes about. But you almost wonder, like, man, are you ready for this? Are you ready to go out there and take that car and take on that responsibility? So it's a lot, but I think there could be, I don't want to say more training, but maybe some evaluation, like where people come in and guys can come in and maybe have a briefing and say, hey, this is just between us in here. This is what we're almost like an intervention kind of, you know what I mean? Bring a guy in and kind of have an intervention and police ourselves. Because if they don't want that, like if these officers don't want to do that, well, guess what? Now look what's happening. Because I'll bring it up because, it's the, elephant in the room, Chauvin, the guy in Minnesota who, the incident that happened with George Floyd. Law enforcement doesn't want to talk about that. A lot of guys, 99% of us, 99.9% of us, when that happened, all of a sudden, oh my God, that guy's an idiot. And everybody was against that. All the guys that I worked with, everybody was 100%. What he did was wrong. I was a defensive tactics instructor, and I took pride in my job, and we didn't teach that. We don't teach that. Once those handcuffs are on and he's saying that, hey, I can't breathe, you know what, sit him up. Sit that man up, try and diffuse the situation. Why are you making it worse? And it's almost as if, are you telling me that's the first time that Chauvin ever did that? And again, this is sound like I'm coming down on law enforcement, but the situation that we're in at this point, you got to do some self-reflection and decide, I don't want this ever to happen again. I want it to go back to where people respected law enforcement, that people don't fear us when we show up. You know what I mean? Oh, here's Mike. He's the community officer. I know Mike. You know what I mean? He's a good guy. He's a good dude. So that's what you want. But when you see stuff what he did, that wasn't his first incident. And I don't have the crystal ball to say, like, why didn't they do this? But if I did, it'd be like, hey, having a little intervention, picking guys off the street who might be struggling and just circling and say, hey, man, things are looking a little bit, out there, maybe out of control. What's going on? And if you take defense to that when everyone's saying it, now you know there's a problem, because you really shouldn't. Because if everybody's coming in and saying, you circle and you trust your brothers in law enforcement, you know what I mean? So I think that would be, that's one way to approach it.
I was having a conversation with a few friends the other day, and quite a few of them are in favor of defunding the police. They're very anti-police, right? And I was kind of, I was just trying to explain to them, because we had a few cops on, and they were talking about, like yourself, the stress of the job. But a few of them got on the rant that, like, cops mostly every day it's busy work, and it's rare that they have these really bad situations where they'll have to pull a gun, etc. And you're talking to me about this, and you're saying that it's every day there's something, even though you're on the phone sometimes you're out, there's usually something that just kind of degrades at you and kind of erodes at what you do. Is that an everyday thing, or is it something that happens? I know, like, it could range, but is that an everyday thing for a lot of cops, what you're talking about with us?
Or is it more like once a week or something like that?
Yeah.
I think a lot of it depends on the agency that you work for. Some departments are have a lot more stress.
Mm-hmm.
The sheriff's office where I live, not too bad. There was definitely things that happened. I mean, we've had a lot of history at that agency. Unfortunately, we've lost officers. But yes, you're right. It starts to peel away. You come in at this with this bright-eyed, you have this mantra that you're going to go out there and make a difference, and pretty soon it starts to erode. And then, by year 10, I mean, that was a good call. And it's like stuff like that. it starts peeling away more and more, and you become more callous, you know, and unfortunately, I mean, that job can do that. And I don't want it to sound like an excuse. It's a reality, you know. And for the people that are saying, you know, defund the police, what I would suggest is, and this isn't me being a smart aleck, is I would say, let me arrange a tour of San Quentin for you. Let me arrange a tour. If you go through San Quentin for a couple hours, you walk through there. If you still feel that way after touring through that facility, then talk to me. Let's have a conversation after that, because there's a lot of good people. Like I look at Mark is a really, really good guy. He's on the spectrum of we're really, really good, nice guy. You know, he'd help someone in need, right? And then, but there's always the opposite end of that spectrum, right? Yeah, the whole realm. You have super nice people. Like one of my favorite people in the world, Warwick Dunn is one of my favorite people. I mean, I don't know if a lot of people don't know his story, but and without going into that, he's up here. I hold that guy to the highest regard. On the other end, then you have like the Jeffrey Epsteins, and there's some monsters that walk around out there. And a lot of those monsters that people don't see every day, they're housed in San Quentin. How do you think they got there? You know what I mean? Social workers didn't put them in there. You know, who's keeping these, you know, the murderers are seeing that we see. And, you know, one of the hardest things that I ever had to do was show up at a traffic scene where there was a fatality. And I had to go, and part of my job as a sheriff's deputy was we had to go notify next of kin. And I was like, I open up his wallet. I'm already feeling miserable. I open my wallet and I see just married, you know, baby in the picture. Now I have to go knock on her door and tell her that she lost her husband in a traffic accident. And I carry that. I've carried that with me for 30 years. And I remember her and breaking down, and I had to hold her, you know, and holding her because she just, you know, had a really difficult time with it. There's a lot of good that we do. I mean, it seems to me like, and rightfully so, the bad incidents, they get magnified, and they should be. They should be. And those knuckleheads need to be weeded out of that. I wish there was a way. I wish I could wave a wand or figure out a way. I mean, I'm a bright guy, but I'm not, you know, super Elon Musk bright, you know, but figure out a way to get rid of, you know, weed these guys out so that profession could, you know, go back to being a honorable profession. And people, and basically it is an honorable profession, but have people have that perspective, the public, you know, regain their faith.
What do you think some of the answers are? Do you think some of the answers might be to maybe just recruit better from the beginning, you know, from the jump? Like, you know, a lot of people, they get into law enforcement for particular reasons, but we don't know why, we don't know their history. But maybe if we pursue somebody who we already kind of view as heading down the right path, and maybe say, hey, do you ever think about becoming because I know that you do that to people at the gym.
Right.
But do you think that something like that might be, I mean, there's not like one answer to this thing, right? But do you think something like that might be, you know, of benefit?
I do, and that's why I do that. I see a lot of the young guys at the gym who are fit, who have, through talking, you met Taylor at the gym, young Roanoke Park police officer, and you know, we try to mentor these young guys and steer some guys into law enforcement who have their act together and have a good head on their shoulders. And
they're already strong. They already got some goals. I mean, you can't say it's a good person just from seeing them at the gym, but you get the idea that, and you also get the idea that they are dedicated to something and they kind of get some of the overall picture.
Well, and to be honest with you, a lot of them come to me. They know that what I've been through. They know that I went through the shooting incident. They know that I was a defensive tactic instructor. They see that I'm 55 years old and I'm still hitting it in the gym as hard as I can. And they come over and they ask me. And when they do, I'm more than happy to share with them. As far as having answers for that, I'll be honest with you, Mark. I think it's a great question. And I think, you know, some people definitely need to get together. I think you need to have community leaders meet with law enforcement leaders, get together and hammer it out fast, because right now it's not, I don't see it getting better. And, you know, they need to do that. You need to have community leaders and get with some, you know, the sheriffs and police chiefs. And it's probably going to sound kind of mean, but the phasing out the older guys and getting these younger guys in is going to definitely help. I mean, and that's, I'm going to have the old guard probably going to be, you know,
Yeah, and
hearing
some
this
people
and-
might say, hey, well, now
What do
you're
you mean by
taking
that?
you're taking experience off the street, right?
Yeah. You are taking some of you are, and that is valuable because having guys, and like I said, I get to pass on my experience.
But they might be able to make the call from a desk rather than being on the street, right?
or make them instructors, maybe get them off the street. And like what you were pointing to or alluding to is that sometimes when you've experienced so much, maybe it's your time to step back off the street. You know, maybe you can do a desk job or an instructor's job at the police academy and kind of go over things, and that interaction with the community is no longer one where it's you see each other at a eye-to-eye level. Sometimes I think some law enforcement come in and they think they're at this level and the public's here. No, it should be like right here.
What are maybe a few things that you don't think police should be involved in at all? Do you have anything where you're just like, man, I hated doing that, and it always just kind of like, it took a lot of time from me, and it was aggravating, and it wasn't beneficial to anybody. It just kind of was annoying. Or difficult, like you said, you know, reporting to the person, you know, that their husband died and stuff like that.
Marijuana was at the, we're talking about this is prior to Prop 215 coming in and being legalized. That to me was a great waste of time. And this is my own personal perspective. And I mean, obviously I'm retired. I can't get in trouble for it. Hopefully not. But I didn't have time for marijuana. I felt like, you know what, guys who, you know, and Joe Rogan can probably attest to this. You smoke some weed and you sit on the couch and you chill out. How many guys, you know, I've never come across guys who, you know, are out there wanting to fight. You know, methamphetamine, different story. You know what I mean? PCP, different story. But when you're talking about, you know, mushrooms or marijuana, I felt like there was so much money poured into, you know, marijuana, you know, trying to get marijuana off the street. And I was just like, man, why are you doing that? It's kind of stupid. And a lot of guys who I worked with felt that way. I get where, you know, oh, it's on the books, so it's illegal and you got to enforce it. But as far as I took discretionary measures, so I was like, no, I'm not. I'd pull somebody over, and if you had a bag of weed, I'm like, dude, you know, I don't have time for that. Get out of here. Because then I'm tied up for a few hours. I can't help somebody because of what? From marijuana. So that was my own personal perspective. So that was something. I mean, the other drug.
What about other drugs like you know, what I guess like what do you think would happen if we were just like fuck it, like just screw it, just like let them go?
Well, that's a good question, but I can tell you from firsthand experience with methamphetamine. Methamphetamine it's a horrible drug. I mean, there was a Rick James part where he was with Dave Chappelle. Man, that's a hell of a drug. You know what I mean? He's talking about cocaine. It's a hell of a drug. That sits in my brain, and it just cracks me up because I think about, I'm like, yes, it is. You know, people do some crazy stuff on methamphetamine and cocaine, but I think the one aspect that they don't see is it takes a lot of chemicals to make methamphetamine. And when I worked with the task force, the drug enforcement agencies, and you know, Bureau of Narcotics Enforcement, and our own task force, and you take down a super lab, and you see all the chemicals that are dumped by where you live. I mean, out in Bodega Bay, out in the side, out where you would never expect it, and there would be a super lab, and would be dumping all these chemicals on the side of the road, and it's a hazardous situation. Here comes dumb Mike coming up, driving up, and seeing all these chemicals, and I walk up there, and there's fumes coming up there, and I shouldn't even be 100 yards next to this thing. This is a hazmat situation. You have to stop, get back, call hazmat. So as far as that, you know. It's not good. I mean, people making methamphetamine, you can spend $500. You know, this is back in the day when you can buy, you know, Sudafed over the counter when it wasn't controlled. $500 worth of Sudafed and some chemicals you can get from Walmart, and you can make, you know, $50,000, $100,000 worth of methamphetamine. So, you know, of course, people were going to do that. But,
start a business. Let's go.
Yeah, Breaking Bad.
That's right.
Breaking Bad.
I wanted to know because I have a group of friends that like Andrew knows about this, Mark knows about this. We got a group of people, and we were all talking about our experiences with police, right? And a majority, if not all, of the black men in the room, a lot of them professionals, business owners, good guys generally. They've literally all had bad experiences with the police that was just seemed kind of unjust, you know. So I'm wondering, do you know if there's a sentiment in terms of police, in terms of like dealing with, if when they go and deal with black individuals, are they, do you feel that some of them are a little bit more scared to go into those communities and deal with individuals like that? Or do they, I mean, I know it's kind of a weird question, but when so many people are saying like, damn, like I have such bad experiences, and all the white guys in the room are like, oh, I've never had a bad experience with the police in my life. It's just like, it seems kind of weird.
That
you know?
perspective that you have is something that I could never experience. See, that's what my skin, I'm tanned. Have that
Jacked and tan.
jacked and tanned. But on the serious side of it, I could never experience that. I mean, I can try and put myself in your shoes and try to understand what that must feel like, as far as having, you're pulling me over because of the color of my skin, or why are you doing this because of the color of my skin? And that's, to me, it makes me sick. It makes me sick to my stomach. I mean, I'll be honest with you. And I think, as far as being intimidated, I think there is an intimidation factor. And I could say, again, I'm not a small guy, but I could picture someone who's, maybe 5'8", 5'9", 150 pounds, and maybe they have a pit bull attitude, maybe they don't. But if you're in a situation where you are dealing with someone like that, hell yeah, I bet you're intimidated. So that's something.
You'd probably be more intimidated with the more unfamiliar you are with the way somebody looks. Somebody with a tattoo on their neck, it doesn't mean they're a bad person at all. I mean, at all. But but a lot of times on the news or TV, like you see, right?
It's the eyes.
Yeah.
It's visualization. It's what we see. And it's like, you brought up a great thing with the tattoos. I would see someone with tattoos, and I would immediately look to see if they had gang-affiliated tattoos. Immediately, my brain goes to law enforcement, and even to this day, I'll look to see if there's a gang affiliation.
I almost always assume if someone's covered in tattoos that they had something happen that's traumatic in their life.
Right.
And that's like my own, like I made that up. Like I don't have any evidence of that. I don't have, but sometimes when you do see somebody covered in tattoos, they have a history of drugs, but it's not all the time.
No, 100%. No, 100% no. But I'm just telling you that switch gets flipped for us. And I can give you my perspective, and I can I don't want to go too far out on a limb and speak for other people, but I have seen it firsthand. That for some people, that badge does make them 6'4" and 250 pounds, and they're not, and that's scary. And it's like that. So when you hear something like, take that badge off, or whatever, it's like, well, that's where that's coming from, because you wouldn't talk to me that way if you weren't wearing that. So from my perspective, is whenever I dealt with someone, I came from that area. It's like, I'm gonna talk to you the way, that I want to be talked to by law enforcement. Just because I'm wearing this uniform doesn't mean that I'm, any different than you. I'm Mike the citizen. I'm gonna go out there. I'm doing a job, and I'm gonna talk to you the way we're talking right now, and de-escalate things. Sometimes, though, we can do that, and if it starts to rise up, well, that's when I have to start thinking, okay, why is this escalating? And that has to happen quickly, because I want to go home to my kids, just like you want to go home to your family, or you want to go home to your spouse. And that's something that we try and de-escalate things without going. I think a lot of it has to do with attitude and the personalities. And I think if there was a way to kind of circling back to what you were saying, if there was a way to weed out that personality, that the person can't come from, you almost want like a Labrador type person, where they're just, kind of mellow, when you need them to be protective, a sheepdog type thing, where, but most part, real chill, kind of handle your business and not have that. But not come from that, not come from a, the perspective of where you're always on.
Can I ask you a question about de-escalation? For example, I've been pulled over a few times, and immediately, like, I turn off my music, I put my hands on like my hood, I put my key out, I put my wallet out, my windows down. My voice is 8 times higher, and I sound like a kid, so no one gets scared of me. But I am curious about this. Like, you see a lot of videos on Instagram and social media now, and I was having a conversation with friends about this too, where people understand that, like, typically a police officer can't tell you to, like, open your trunk or open bags in your backseat, et cetera, right?
Fourth Amendment,
Right? But you then get curious, like, if they do ask, if I want to de-escalate the situation, I should probably just try and comply, right?
That's a great question.
Yeah, if you're like, oh, it's my Fourth Amendment right, I don't have to do that.
But
But then you're worried that that you're causing confrontation, right?
Yeah.
you're concerned about the confrontation, and in a perfect world, that should end it right there. But then that sends a red flag, because again, I am a human being, and I start to go, okay, well, why don't you want me to? Well, I don't want you to because it's my Fourth Amendment right, and it's an illegal search and seizure. So, but then what happens is, and I can tell you this from experience, is law enforcement, we start going, okay, well, how can I get in there? What kind of nexus can I do to get in there even without his consent? And I'm not talking about illegally. I'm talking about, like, if I smell marijuana or if I smell
That's suspicion, right?
yeah, you have to tie things together. You can't just violate someone's civil rights. And if you do that, guess what? You're gonna be held in front. You're gonna lose your job, and you're gonna get sued. And rightfully so. In order to do this job, you're taught through the academy, what people's rights are, and you don't want cops out there doing that. But what you said is, getting back to your point, I would say no. I would just say, you know what, I don't want to come across, in a negative manner, but my Fourth Amendment, I really don't think you have a right to search my stuff, and I'd say no. And it's difficult because if you're recording, and in this day and
Nowadays, yeah.
in this day and age, I would record it. I mean, law enforcement's wearing body camera, and sometimes conveniently it falls off, and you're like, well, how did that? Well, in a tussle, it does come up, but sometimes stuff comes up. Record it, record that situation, and then, again, these conversations that we're having, it makes me feel bad. I'm coming from I feel bad because.
Would you maybe recommend to citizens to, like, record audio or record video, like when they do get pulled over? Maybe you just put your phone in, like,
probably without doing it in an aggressive
yeah, you're not like
way.
you're not like
Yeah,
holding it like
exactly.
that. You just have it
Yeah.
there, and
not
it's
to
just,
not to escalate, like we said, not to escalate the situation to try and but to actually protect yourself. And it's something that
it's not a bad idea, really.
no, 100%.
And you as a police officer, do you think you would, like, be pissed off that the guy?
Me, no. I'd be happy because sometimes when you hear some of the stuff that's said, against
you,
us, some of the things that we're accused of, the body camera, like when body camera first came out, you had a faction of the people of law enforcement who didn't like it, and then you had a faction who said, "Man, thank goodness it's here," because we're getting accused of things, and it's like now we have video proof that no, I didn't say that, no, I didn't do this, and look at this person's behavior. So it's fantastic from my perspective. Now I can, show my supervisor and show the judge, look, this is different than what this person's reporting it. So it's the same thing. I would say, we all have smartphones. Absolutely, record that interaction. Don't escalate it. Don't do it in a manner which, you're gonna. If that's what you're going for, then go right ahead. But then you're stirring the pot. And then, sorry.
No, so I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Do you think it'd be a good idea to let the police officer know, like, hey, like, I have my phone out, I'm recording audio, video, whatever, as whatever, just as a backup or as a proof of what our
You don't have to
interaction
say
is?
this, but if you want to keep it kind of de-escalate, I'd say, hey, officer, do you mind if I record this just for my safety and your safety? Do you mind if I just record this? And then by doing that, by saying that, it's going to bring that, bring the officer down. I don't think, like, I never took that, got my uniform on, got in the patrol car in hopes for confrontation. Just the opposite. You go in, you want to be able to help people. I have countless stories that I could tell you. And at some point, I'll tell you a few of the good ones. But where I've helped people, recovered stolen cars to, for people who've, that was her sole means of transportation, and I was able to recover that car for them. It made me feel great. I was riding high for that.
That's what you thought you signed up for,
That's
probably
what-
in the beginning. Like,
Yeah.
we're going to catch the bad guy and
Yeah, few and
get
far
that
between.
stolen car.
Few and far between. But it was fun. But then there's, it just comes down to, I think each officer has to kind of look back and say, look inside and see where you're at in this in your career. Is this the career for me? Is this changing me as a person in a negative way? Then you know what? Choose a different career. Go be a fireman. Everyone loves a fireman. You know what I mean?
What about someone just like berating you? You pull them over, or there's a situation, and they just start just laying into you, and they're saying like, personal stuff, but it has nothing to do with, what happened. Like you are questioning them for something completely different. I mean, that has to be like aggravating, and then it's probably a little difficult to stick to like what you're supposed to be doing, right?
That's a great point. I mean, I've had it happen. I mean, it's difficult because part of you wants to, handle it like you would on the street, without the badge. But
Right.
no, you can't do that. You're professional and you're trained a certain way, and if you want to keep putting food on the table, you're going to treat this person, professionally. So you have to have that mindset. And is it hard? Absolutely. And you see these videos where sometimes these officers slip and they're just, and what goes viral is that guy
Right,
doing
right.
that guy doing that. He just handled probably 15 calls, and then on his 15th call, someone set him off, and now
He snapped.
he snapped. Absolutely. You know what? And it's like, dang, man, I just handled 14 calls. Everything was perfect, and now number 15, that switch got flipped, and I just went full auto. And it's difficult. It's not for me. I'm a mellow person. It took a lot to get by homework. I mean, you've done a lot of time, surveilling and doing things, and you pull somebody over, and you have probable cause to pull them over, and then you can kind of smell that methamphetamine has a strong smell, and it's something that, I mean, once you smell it, there's meth in this car. You can hide it with usually guys try and hide it with a bunch of those trees, those Christmas trees, and you start to laugh, and you're like, okay. But as far as when you find that and you see that kilo, you get high off that, and you're like, man, I want 1 kilo. Okay, now I want to build that 1 kilo into 2 kilos, and you become almost like a drug. And as soon as I run the plates, I see 2 people take off running through a field. So I put it out, and it starts blaring on my computer screen, stolen vehicle, and I have dispatchers yelling, Edward 71 has a stolen vehicle, and he's in pursuit, and I'm foot pursuit. I'm running through fields, and I wind up catching these 2 guys, guy and a girl, and handcuffing them, bringing them back, and that feeling, and then they got taken off. They got taken off to jail. I got to return the car back to. I went and picked up the pastor, brought him back, got gas for the car, and I would do that for anybody. You know what I mean? That's the thing. That feeling that I got after doing that. That made my year. I was like, man, this is an incredible feeling. Next day, I show up to work, and there's a big old plate of brownies that she had made and brought to the department. I'm like, man, this is law enforcement. This is why I took this job. But then, there's the other end of the spectrum, the drug aspect of it. And, I started with, finding a little bag, and then you would work your confidential informant, and informant would order up some drugs, and, you'd pull that person over, and you'd find the drugs, like Easter egg hunt thing. You'd look for it, you find it, and you'd get a high off of it. That's the best way I can describe it. And it went from a little bag to an ounce, then from an ounce to like a pound, and pretty soon I'm working my way up into like multiple pounds. And then we found, had an informant call me and goes, there's a large drug stash with rifles, guns, and they're selling drugs next to this little school in the town of Roner Park. And it struck a chord with me, because I'm like, okay, you're dealing drugs and stuff, and there's a school right next door. That's not okay. So I do my homework, tell my partner, I said, hey, this is a great project. Let's get a couple other guys, and let's take this guy in. And this guy's a gang member. He's been previously deported twice, and been in prison twice, and just not your run of the mill nice guy. So we get down to where I see his vehicle, and I have a neighbor called in and said, yeah, he showed up, he's inside. So we do our homework. We find out that there's probation clause to get in, and he has a warrant for his arrest. So we have all the legal means to get into the house. So we set up on the house, and of course, you do everything the way you were trained. And in this particular incident, I felt like something was different. And we're talking about instincts and such, but the hairs on the back of my neck, when we started climbing those stairs to go inside, the hairs on the back of my neck just start popping. I'm like, oh, something's different. And I can't explain why. I'll tell you in a minute. But, that climb up those stairs, something was definitely different. There was pucker factor times 10. So we go in through, pardon my description, but we get through the door, and hiding behind there's a little doorway, walk through it, and then there's a cracked opening. And I see this door is open, and I signal to my partner. We announced that, sheriff's office coming in, come out. No one's coming out. I'm like, oh, we got to go in. So I had heard that this person had firearms in, and I'm thinking, man, if he has a rifle, that rifle's going to go right through my vest. I'm toast. So I see the door cracked open, and it's me coming in, walking in, and just as I touch that door, so as I touch the door, it's called slicing the pie. It's like cutting the pie. They want you to take angles to where you can see as safe as possible in case someone's hiding. So I'm slicing that pie, and as soon as I come around that little bit, I touch that door, and now it's a trick. He popped up from crouched down and put it was a 9mm Glock, and I saw a puff of smoke come out, and I felt this burning sensation right in the left side of my chest. I'm like, ow, that's burning. He got me. And immediately I'm like, okay, if you got me, then I'm taking you with me. You're leaving with me. So then I return fire. We're gun to gun. And my
They're
round,
only a couple feet away from each other.
2 feet away. And I saw the puff of smoke, saw the top of his head, smelled that, felt the burning, immediately got angry. Couldn't believe this was happening. I'm like, dang, I got almost 19 years old. Now this is happening. So then I return fire. My round goes through his hand, and his second round whizzes by my head and hits the door frame, makes a loud sound. And then my second round knocked him down. And I get up, and as I get up, I start walking to it. And I want to make sure I don't step in front of my cover officer so he doesn't, I get shot by friendly fire. So he's leaving, and then, I follow, get out the door, and I throw somewhere like a movie. You're throwing the rounds back, hoping it doesn't shoot me in the back of the head. Mm-hmm. And I make my way out. And as I come out, I pull my vest away, and I open my vest, and I see that there's blood coming out, and it's coming out pretty good. I'm like, oh, damn, this vest is supposed to stop the round. So I yelled to my buddy Joe, and I'm like, Joe, hey, I'm hit. You can call an ambulance. So he's excited at this point. I mean, obviously, he sees the blood, and he sees me, and why I didn't call for myself, probably because I would have been screaming like a little girl on the radio. Mm-hmm. So I, delegated to him, let him scream. So he starts yelling on the radio for help, and shortly thereafter, the suspects, he's stumbling out of the doorway, and I'm on the side of the door, and I'm waiting for him to come out to see if he still has a gun in his hand. Well, he comes out, and he has the gun in his hand, and right before I pull the trigger, my partner starts shooting, and then, he took him down. And then he comes over to me, and he's like, I'm like, dude, where's the ambulance? I go, I don't want to code here, in this parking lot. I go, if it's not here in a minute, I'm jumping in the car and I'm driving to the hospital. I'm not dying here. Yeah. He's like, no, man, don't go anywhere. You'll crash the car and you won't make it. I'm like, you got 1 minute. So I jumped in the car. I'm waiting. I'm keeping pressure in my head. I keep seeing, my childhood, and all these thoughts start going through my head. And I'm looking down at it. I'm like, that's still bleeding. Yeah, it's still there. So I turn the car over. I start to drive, and my partner jumps over and jumps in the car. He goes, no, they're coming. They're right here. So the ambulance, pulls up, and code 3 to the hospital, and the paramedic has the oxygen on. She's looking down and she's looking at my vitals, and she goes, "Do you want me to call your wife?" And that was like that scared me. I'm like, "No, am I not going to make it? Is this the last phone call that I'm going to be able to call her?" And she goes, "I don't know." I'm like, "I don't want to hear that." She told me, "Yeah, you're going to be okay. Go ahead and call and tell your wife you're going to be okay." That's what I wanted to hear, but I didn't get that. So I respect it. She's, just saying that. And I go, "No, I'm not going to make that phone call. So I'll wait till I get to the hospital." I didn't want to leave that burden, that phone call. "Hey, honey, I got shot at work. Sorry. I'm
Yeah, we
leaving
don't know
you."
what's going to happen.
Yeah, 5 kids, I'm going to be crying, So meanwhile, while I'm going to the hospital, there's 2 deputies showing up at my house, and they show up at the house, and she answers the door, and that's never a good sign. And she's a police officer's wife, so she knows when 2 guys show up, it's not good news. So she almost passes out, and they're emotional, and they're like, "Hey, Mike got shot. We don't know what's going on." And so they rush me in, and the doctor comes in with the scalpel. He's looking for the bullet. He can't find it. He's asking me. I go, "I think it's in me." I go, "It's bleeding pretty good. Maybe it's in me. I don't know." He runs a X-ray over it. He goes, "No." He goes, "You're lucky. There's no bullet in you. You just got, you have a nice hole there. We're going to sew you up, and we'll move you out of here." So that was it was pretty interesting. Yeah.
So where'd the bullet go? Did it like go in and
it actually went in?
came out?
Yeah, the way they said it depicted was it actually went in, created the hole, and then the vest caught it and pulled it back out. So it created the hole, and the whole left side of my body just black and blue. And it's kind of weird. I didn't feel the pain. You're in shock at this point. I'm grateful at this point too. I'm like, hey, I'm going to be alive. I made it through this. I'm thankful. I had all kinds of crazy questions after that. People are like, "Well, how come you only shot, 2 or 3 times?" I'm like, "Oh, okay, let's trade places." You know what I mean? You can't Monday morning quarterback a situation like that when you're in it, and then someone's shooting back at you, because you'll see guys at the range and they're like dead on, perfect, center mass. Well, that target's not shooting back at you. You know what I mean? And then when you get hit, like, that's the thing. I got to talk to an academy class, and it was interesting. They asked, "What did it feel like?" And I said, "Imagine taking a hot metal poker and shoving that into your chest and leaving it there." So, but the doubt of not knowing whether that was in there was worrisome.
Yeah.
So.
Did you retire like immediately, or did it take
A little
time
bit.
for you to talk to your wife and figure out what you wanted to do next? Or
My wife made that decision. It was the very next day.
you might have been contemplating this anyway.
Part of me at that point, I was like, okay, I know this conversation is going to come up, because I've had other incidences when she was saying, "You know what?" She goes, "I don't know if I can take anymore." And to me, I knew this was the icing on the cake. But for me, the part I don't want to leave out though was I showed up to work the next day, and guys were like, "What are you doing here? You can't be here."
Like, "I'm on the schedule, dickheads."
And they're like, "No, you can't be here. You have to go get cleared before you come back." And my brain wasn't working. I was just like, "Oh, I'm coming back to work. I'm going to throw my stuff. I need a new vest. I need this. I need that." And I called the vest company, and I told them, and they put it out on the PA into the factory, and you can hear everyone clapping and stuff. They're like, "Hey, we got another save." So that was awesome. It was pretty cool. So anyway, I showed up to work the next day, and people were like looking at me crazy, and like, "You can't be here." And they were probably scared, like, "What's he doing here? What are you doing here?" So anyway, they went back home, had to do some evaluations. Wife talked to me, and she's like, "Hey," she goes, "That's it." She goes, "You have 20 years in." She goes, "You're done." She goes, she goes, "It's either your career or me and your kids." I go, "I already put you through enough. I'm sorry." But it definitely affected me. It definitely affected me psychologically. And I think, you go through the depression, you go through the stress, some scary stuff that I went through, standing in front of the bed, swinging a baton, and at an invisible, one night I woke up and I grabbed my baton. I thought someone was in our room trying to kill us. And I'm in front of that bed, and I'm swinging that baton like a madman. I'm sweating. And my poor wife is yelling and screaming. And she's like, "Wake up, wake up, wake up." And so finally I wake up, and here I am with this baton, and I'm sweating. I'm like, what happened? She goes, "You were just swinging that thing like you were trying, kill somebody." And She goes, you can't be, with her. She goes, get rid of all your all your work stuff, move your gun, your safe, and your baton. And she goes, you're on couch duty for a little bit till you get squared away. So she's a strong woman. I mean, like I said, like I love watching stuff with you and Andy and how supportive she is.
Thank you.
And for me, it was the same way with my wife Jill. She's very supportive. I put her through a lot, and that job does put spouses through a lot. So I owed her that. That was something that definitely I owed her.
What'd you move on to?
After that, it was caring for. I had a little special needs son, and I wound up. My bond with him grew 10 times, tenfold. So I got to spend a lot of times with my son Caden. And then I one day was talking to a psychiatrist because I had a lot of stress issues, and she goes, you know what, Michael? She goes, your stress that you're feeling. She goes, your brain is like a bucket, and you keep putting this stress in this bucket, and you're not dumping any of it out. And she goes, and that bucket's filling up really fast with you. You're on hypervigilant. You see things and you go to 100. She says, you got to find a way to dump that bucket out. So when she said that visually, I mean, it struck. Okay, it's spilling over into my life, and it's causing friction. I'm not the person that I was. I'm turning into a jerk. So being a defensive tactics instructor and also being fit during work, the shrink goes, well, why don't you go back into the gym and go work out your stress, and take that avenue to dump out that bucket. So I went into the gym, started working out. I came across a really good friend of mine. His name is Pete. Haven't seen him in a long time, and he was doing some bicep curls with this board. And I go, Pete, what is that? He goes, I'll check this out. So anyway, long story short, he goes, let's go into business together. Let's turn this board into something. And right away, I'm like, Mark Bell, Slingshot, watch the movies, we've met, talked, you're humble, super nice guy. And I'm like, man, let's put some work and put some effort into this bicep board, and let's make this thing, take off. So that was something that we worked on. It was great because I could put my focus, attention into something positive.
How long ago did you start that?
That was, I want to say about a little over a year ago, 2 years ago. We went into, prior to that, I was doing dabbled in, bodybuilding, did a physique contest just to cross that off the, 50 years old. It's like, okay, I want to get a 500-pound deadlift, and I also want to do a bodybuilding show. So I'm like, what can I do? You have chicken legs. You're definitely not doing bodybuilding, so let's go into physique. Board shorts are going to hide those for you. Not well enough. They saw my calves, and it was like, okay, good choice on the physique. So anyway, did a little show with Hani Rambod, his show up here in Sacramento. It was fun. I had put a lot of time, a lot of effort in it. And when I saw that you went into bodybuilding and you worked with Hani and how well you did, I was like, dang, that's stuff that I got to do next time, and if I wind up doing it. But the bodybuilding thing was great, working as a mentor with young guys, young law enforcement, young guys. I'd like to mention there's a young guy, high school kid, his name is Sawyer, and he lost his dad of brain cancer. And my little boy's special needs, and we were doing sprints at a track, and this young man, senior in high school, Sawyer, was doing tire flips. And I'm looking over, and I don't know him, and my son goes running over to him and starts talking to me. And it's the cutest thing. And this 18-year-old high school kid is playing with my special needs son. Melted my heart. So then I find out his backstory, and it's like he lost his dad, and his mom's a nurse, and she's an awesome woman, Kelly Thompson. And long story, I said, Sawyer, why don't you come and train with me at my place? And I go, we'll train, and let's get you. I see you doing here. You're by yourself. You're working out at my place, and we're going to train. And the mom's like, how much do I owe you? And I'm like, you're kidding, right? And you go, no, I'm doing this because I like Sawyer, I like you, and I was told to pay it forward. So through some of the therapy sessions that I went through, was like, pay it forward. Do something without asking for something back. It's great to have reciprocal, people in your life, but it's also, great when you can actually do something like what you're doing for me. it means a lot to me. And it's like the changes that these little things that you can do, the changes that you can make in people's lives, positive things, is what it's all about. You know what I mean? I mean, feeling good and helping people, man, it's such a great feeling. So I got an opportunity to do that. He went on to San Diego State, went and played rugby, San Diego State. We still keep in contact. When he comes back, we train together. And he's getting it. It's funny because he was asking me about law enforcement. I go, no, go into fire. And and he's going to be a fireman. So, he listened, and just a great young man. And again, the positive changes that we can meet people and make positive things. It's going to make a better place.
I don't think we recognize how simple it is to help people. I think that a lot of times we think like, oh, I don't have this, I don't have that, so I can't really help anybody. I think people usually think like it's just financial, but like you think about the best like gifts that you've ever been given, or the best, like, I'm not really talking about like a present necessarily, but usually like the best stuff that people give you, it's not
From
it's
the
not
heart.
yeah, it's not a physical thing. I mean, like, you have kids, like my favorite thing is when my daughter like draws me something and that's my card, that's my birthday card. Like that goes way further than somebody just buying me something stupid that I'm going to forget about
Right. It
in
means a
in
lot.
3 months or whatever.
100%. And it's from the heart. And that's the thing. I think with people, if you surround yourself with positive people and you want to make a positive impact, that's a really great thing. And I think you do that. And that's something that, like, in all your seminars and all your podcasts and everything, you present this positive image, and it changes people's lives. Like, you didn't know me from Adam, and we cross paths. And sometimes you wonder, like, well, why were we supposed to meet? You know what I mean? Just like, why did Caden run up to that boy in high school? But why were we supposed to meet? And I looked at it as like, it's not a chance meeting. I mean, you can look at it that way, but I was supposed to be there. I met that young man. I helped, guide him. We worked out. It was good for his mom to see him having a positive male influence. And she told me that. Again, melted my heart, made me feel good. And I think the more that we can do that, rather than, it doesn't take that much more energy to be positive, or energy at all, than it is to be negative.
It might take you a little bit of time sometimes.
Right.
You might have to spend a few minutes with somebody or a little extra time here or there. But, it's interesting because, yeah, you are like giving something to somebody. You're not really expecting anything back, but what you get back from it is you get a tremendous amount from it, and you're just not really, maybe that's not like the main focus, not the main reason. You're just like, oh, because if you think about it, a lot of times other people have helped you somewhere along the way. I think a lot of times people want to think like, oh, I'm a self-made man, or I did all this stuff, by myself, and we want to think that we're tough and we're badass. But somebody lended you a hand, at some point. If you can just help somebody get, just a little momentum in the right direction, I think it's a great thing. And I think, like, I can't even think of a situation where it didn't come back and assist me in some way. Like, it always seems like it helps.
I agree with you, and that's something that, like, going back to coaching kids in sports and making that positive, keeping them off the street, and they are playing, sports, are learning teamwork, and they're also learning that, hey, we work together for a sole purpose of focus, and you're out there and you're coaching, you're spending time with them, and the other parents see that too. They're like, hey, this, deputy sheriff who has a family is out here coaching these kids and spending time with them. And these are things that, as far as making a positive impact in our communities, these are things that we should be doing. And, I took pride in doing that. And that's why it's, like I said, I have a great deal of respect for where you are now and where you were. And the fact that you help people is incredible.
I'm curious to see, why was it that you encouraged him to go into fire instead? Because it seems like he's a great guy. He would have been someone, especially with somebody like you who's been a cop, would have been someone who could have been a good cop. Why'd you encourage him to go into fire instead? And then also, if someone does want to head into law enforcement these days with this climate, what do you think that they should keep in mind?
Definitely, if you get offended very easily, do not go into law enforcement. If you have thin skin, do not go into law enforcement. I mean, you have to have a really good demeanor. You can't be too high, too low. It's it's not an easy job. I mean, it's not. I mean, some people can portray it a certain way. You know, I did that job. It's not very easy. It takes a toll on you. But young people, that's a really good question. I have to give it some deep thought, because you asked why I steered him towards fire. And it's a joke, but everyone says, you know, everybody loves a fireman. You know what I mean? When fire and law enforcement have a really weird relationship. We tease each other, but we respect each other. You know, and it's almost like that brother relationship where you give them nuggies or whatever, you fight with them, but you're still your brother. Mm-hmm. So, but everybody loves firemen. I mean, when firemen show up to the house, it's like fantastic. You know, you're not, you know what I mean? Thank you for being here. You're saving babies, you know, and stuff. It's a, you know, incredible position. You know what I mean? So it's, for me, I like that young man. And his mom went through a traumatic experience with her husband passing away. The last thing I wanted to do, like, I would have felt horrible, and it's selfish reasons for me. I would have felt horrible had I directed, because she knew I was in law enforcement. She knew what happened to me, and she still wanted me to, you know, mentor her son. And so here I am, and I'm like, well, let's steer him towards fire, because law enforcement, granted, the odds are like 1 in a million, and I couldn't have won the lottery, right? I had to wind up taking a bullet. But with him, it was like, maybe he would have made, you know, a great police officer, but I didn't, selfish reasons, I didn't want, if something was to happen to him, and then I'd feel horrible that the mom lost her son, and indirectly, you know, I steered him toward that profession. I mean, it still could happen in fire. I mean, firemen die and stuff like that. But yeah. For me, it was that selfish reason. I didn't want to put that on her. And as far as the young guys going through the academy and things, I do talk to them, and I tell them, right now you feel invincible, but I can tell you, with a little 9mm piece of copper went into my chest and was burning in there, you're not invincible. I mean, I'm wearing the Superman shirt, but you know what? Thank God for that vest. I wouldn't be here, because that was direct placement. That would have, you know, I was smoked. So not smoky, but anyway. But the big thing is, I think I tell them is that it's take it, do the job for the right reason. Okay, don't go into it just for the paycheck. I mean, the paycheck's decent. The benefits used to be fantastic. They're not anymore. You're taking this job right now, that you're taking this job in this climate, like you just pointed out. That's really, really hard on these young guys. It's gonna speed their process up. Their learning curve is gonna be sped up so much, because of, you're gonna deal with a lot of, you know, unhappy people in a short period of time. And so, you know, you're either gonna find a different job, or you'll learn a way to adapt with it. But it's a stressful job, and man, hopefully they come from a place where they want to treat everybody fairly, you know. And that's the thing. Like, my parents instilled that. I watched how your mom and dad, you know, through the through the movies, how they raised you guys. My parents raised us, me and my brothers, to treat people the way you want to be treated. And that was like, there was no, my dad was 6'2", 240 pounds, and there was no way you were going to cross. You were going to make sure you were respectful. And for me, it was yes, sir, yes, ma'am, the whole way. You know, I went to Catholic school, and then after Catholic school, I mean, it was these things that were instilled in us. And I think if more parents took an active role in their kids, and kind of make sure, and this goes for law enforcement too, I think you go in there, you be respectful. You know, meet somebody, when you come across someone and they're upset, de-escalate it, bring it down. Don't escalate a situation when you don't have to. And you need you need good teachers in the academy, you need good officers on the street, and you need good supervisors out there promoting that message. De-escalate things. But you also have to be ready, you know, if something does happen, like what happened to me.
You mentioned you've had like extra training as a police officer, but in just being a police officer without seeking out any extra training, do they teach you at all about you know, how to handle, because you mentioned later on having all that stress, do they teach you at all about how to kind of handle stress, or how to kind of almost de-escalate yourself, like de-escalate a lot of the things that one day you're dealing with, a car accident that's real horrific, and the next day, and so on. Is there any time, or is there any teaching of like, hey, we got to kind of clean out a lot of these thoughts and things like that?
Very briefly, very brief. It's in the police academy. They go over some breathing techniques.
So you kind of get it once.
You
type of
get you
deal.
get you get it once,
Yeah.
and then that's it. And then you kind of hope that stays with you, but it's very minuscule. You're talking about a short block of period where you're under a lot of stress already, because if you screw up in the academy, you're gone. You're finding a new career path.
So to put that into perspective with somebody that we had on the show recently, at every 55 during the day at 4:55, 5:55, 6:55, this person has in their phone to bring themselves down, to calm themselves down, to be mindful, and they practice breathing. So that for that person, it might be that example might be a little excessive, but this is a person that just wants to succeed, just wants to be happy. He doesn't seem like he has anywhere near the stress that a police officer would have. So, in what you're saying, getting that training just kind of a one-timer, we can just kind of see like that's just not nearly enough, and that maybe trying to interject a little bit more. That obviously police officer is not going to be able to implement doing it every hour on the hour, but maybe once a week someone comes in and discusses it, or a reminder, or maybe it's once a month. Is there some scenario that you can think of in your head where police officers could get extra training? Like, do they have time for that? And it seems complicated because, if it pulls you off the street, kind of, because it pulls you off the street. I got to train you. So, what was your experience like with some of that?
Well, you do a lot of firearms training. And then you have to qualify. I'm going to make this parallel. You have to qualify with your firearm in order to keep your job. I mean, if you're not a good shot, and the likelihood of you using your gun, I mean, granted did happen for me, but the likelihood of you using it, there's some people who go 20, 30 years of career and never had to, shoot anybody. There's a lot of people like that who've never, used a weapon. But you have to qualify all the time using your firearm.
Like once a year or something like that?
Yeah, sometimes it was even more than that. You did have to qualify.
Is that common, do you think,
Yes,
around the country?
it is.
So,
It's
okay.
commonplace. So you have to be proficient in that because it's a perishable skill.
Yeah.
So if you have to do that, why not qualify psychologically? And why not, if you're going to you're going to do this job and you're going to carry that responsibility, which is that 9mm or 40 caliber gun, and some of these guys have AR-15s, or Joe Biden would say AR-14.
He's
sorry.
always on point.
I had to throw that in there. Sorry, but anyway, why not have? If you're going to spend this time doing it for firearm training, and you're going to do that, make it a mandatory thing every year that you have to pass that, and then there's not the likelihood that you're going to, you're not going to use your gun that often.
Yeah, what are you using? You're using your brain.
You're using your brain. And what do you use more often on every call? Your brain. So why not make that, hey, this is mandatory. Some guys are going to push back against it, but you know what? It's for the betterment of, not only is it a betterment for you, but it's also the betterment of the people you're serving, the community. The community doesn't feel safe. And that is
It should help with your home life too, because you're not bringing that work home and so forth.
And it's a sick feeling for law enforcement guys who are like, man, we're out there risking our lives and we got a lot of hate on us. And well, let me see, if people come together and we come up with a solution that could help and the community likes it, why not back it? I mean, why are you pushing back against something that might be helpful? So psychological, you should qualify psychologically. I'm sorry to say that. I mean, I'm not sorry to say that. You should have to qualify psychologically. You deal with a lot of stressful stuff. There's incidents that I deal with that pop into my brain, that on a daily basis that happen, and I'm like, you carry that with you, and you better learn how to manage it. So that was a great point. I mean, definitely qualifying that way, getting some help, definitely spending more time, but absolutely make it a priority.
How do you think from general, you said you work with younger cops. How are they receiving on the receiving end of the whole police reform ideas that are going on right now? I know there are a lot of stuff that people are saying that are obviously super negative. Like there's this thing going around ACAB.
Yeah, I saw that.
I have somebody I know that is a friend, but she's putting that all over her stories all the time. I'm just like, I don't know, Mark, have you heard of ACAB?
No, I have not.
All cops are bastards.
Oh.
And that's like a big old sentiment that's going on right now on the side of people looking for police reform, which I just think is absolutely stupid. It's literally the stupidest thing I've ever heard. If you're listening, you know who you are. You're retarded. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You're really dumb. But yeah, sorry for using that word, guys. That just pisses me off. But how do you feel on that end? How do cops feel about police reform? Do most of the guys that you're dealing with feel that it's something that they that's good for them, or are they kind of annoyed about it?
This is a great topic because the young officer Taylor for Roanoke Park Police, we had just finished working out, and we were out by our cars out in front of the sand gym, and this black gentleman walks up, and he's in his late 20s, early 30s. He's a community leader, but he has a long history, criminal history in his background. And I didn't know any of that, but he saw the way we interacted in the gym, and he kind of knew I was law enforcement. But I didn't know he had that background, and I didn't know he was a community leader. But he comes out, and we start talking, and things started progressing, and he started talking about law enforcement and community issues. And we had a great conversation. This is with a young man. So this is my perspective, right? With a lot of experience. This is a young man's perspective, 25 years old, brand new on the job. And here's someone he's been to prison. He's had a rough life. We're both Caucasian. He's black. And then here we're having this, conversation, and it's doing everybody good. And we're not 100%, right? But we're being respectful. Like I don't understand from your perspective, but I'm listening to you, and I respect that. And I have seen friends get injured on the job, but he's actually seen family members get killed, and by law enforcement. And so for him to actually be able to talk, and we had a civil conversation, and he enjoyed it, and I enjoyed it, and we were like, why can't we get these community leaders and law enforcement together to sit down and talk and see how we can kind of bridge that gap? Because there's a huge gap right now, right? So why can't we bridge that gap? Kind of have guys come together and go, look, this is what our goal is the same as your goal. You guys want to be treated fairly. You want the community to be safe, and that's what we want. We want the same thing. But you have to respect each person's, stance on that, and maybe, have a little compromise in between, both sides maybe come in a little bit. But when you have people spray painting ACAB everywhere, doesn't make me feel good. Doesn't make these young law enforcement officers. It builds that divide. And so I look at it this way. Do you want things to keep going the same way? Is that what you want? Because that's what you're doing. By doing that, you're putting your message out there. Fantastic. That's how you feel, right? And I'm not saying you don't have a right to feel that way, but if you want things to get better in the community, how is that going to help? How is that going to help? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not. It's just going to, that divide's going to stay there. Things are not going to change. And people always talk about, like, we want change is good. We want things to get better. 100%.
Yeah, I think you just have to look at the different sides of the story, and you got to, try to gain some insight or gain some perspective on it. My son is 16, and he'll say certain things, and I'm like, just make sure that that's true for you. That's all. You can say whatever you want, but just make sure that you really believe in that, because he'll ask questions or he'll say something, and I'll say, you know what, I understand your opinion. You're entitled to it. You don't have to think like I think. But I sometimes will tell him, I'll say, hey, you should probably look that up, or you should look up this other thing, because this is the other side of the story that maybe you didn't hear quite yet. And then you could take both sides, and then you can figure out a way to kind of split the difference between, what you originally believed and then you factor in some new facts, right? A lot of times people don't want to take time to do that. And they get outraged, they get upset, they get fired up. And I think sometimes well, it's understandable. You know, it's understandable for us. You're humans. We're fallible. We're going to be emotional at times. But if you can start to gain some insight as to like why does that happen, or why does that continue to happen? Why is that like that? Is it tradition? Is it something people are being forced into? Like, what is the situation? How do I learn more about it? What's knowable about a topic? And then once you start to gather some of those facts, then I think it's important at that point that you start to communicate with other people how you feel about it.
You hit a key word in that was facts. As long as you base your feelings or your opinion on facts, factual information, I have no qualms with that. If you come to me and you say, hey, this is a fact and this is why I feel this way, I can respect that. If you feel a certain way, like the person you were talking about that had the ACAB on there, they feel a certain way and they're putting it out there, but is it really based on a lot of factual information? And if so, explain it to me in a civil manner. And
You use the word all. So
Right.
let's have you try to explain that. And
77,000 law enforcement officers in the USA. 77,000.
It already seems kind of flawed.
So
once you use an absolute
77,000. You talk about the calls for service. They said there's 3 to 5 million calls for service that we handle, and then because we're humans and there are some knuckleheads out there, those are things are going to happen. But 99% of the law enforcement are good people. They just want to do their job, protect their community, and go home to their families. And so I think one thing what I would like to see, and this is, I think if we had the community leaders in the black community come to maybe an academy class and have somebody, I mean, yourself, you're very intelligent, you're articulate, and I know when people use that word, they throw, there's something behind it. No, there's not. It's you can communicate, and I think what would be great is to hear from your perspective. When I get pulled over, my heart rate races, and there's a reason why I feel that way, and there's a reason why my community feels that way, and here are the reasons why. And then these young guys coming on board could understand from the black community that, hey, what can we do to bring that down? What can we do to de-escalate that situation? To not, when you get pulled over, man, maybe it's my taillight or something, or this officer is not going to try and go through my car and look for something. That'd be awesome, right? Mm-hmm. So why not get community leaders black community leaders come into the police academy and talk to these young officers and explain to them, hey, this is why we feel this way. We feel horrible when we get pulled over. Our heart rate's racing, and we're not sure if we're going to make it out of this traffic stop. And I know sometimes you'll see a depiction in a viral video where things happen like that, and it's like that. There's millions of traffic stops and millions of times where things don't go wrong. They go. You won't hear about that, but you will hear about the things that did go wrong. But why not find a way to fix it, to kind of get this new generation coming in, young guys like Taylor, these young academy graduates that are coming in, and teach them. Go, listen, do you want to have this discord? Do you want to have this, gap that's out there, or do you want to be able to, walk through the community and people respect you and you respect them, and you pull somebody over and their heart rate isn't racing, mm-hmm. You know what I mean, and they're not fearful. Why? How difficult is that? I think that would be a great idea.
It is really weird though. Like, I think I mentioned this when another officer was here and we were on the podcast, with all the videos that we're seeing in terms of police brutality, even myself, I know that a majority of cops are not like that. I understand that. I'm not one of those, and I don't believe that a majority of cops are bad or doing what some of these individuals are doing. But seeing that does, even though I know I shouldn't necessarily be afraid because I know how to handle myself in those situations, it does make me more afraid. So when I see a cop behind me on the street, I start to just be like, oh shit. Like, it does start to freak me out a little bit, even though it is actually kind of irrational for me to feel that way. So it's just, if I'm coming from a rational point of view, where I know all cops aren't like that, the individuals that are already having negative sentiments towards police, seeing that's just going to strengthen that 10 times more.
Right, 100%. And that's something that is, how we can fix that is having law enforcement when, the education part of it, meeting with community leaders, learning how, when you're coming up on a patrol stop on something where you've got your probable cause and you address that person respectfully. And I guess, again, 99.9% of them do. And every once in a while, that call number 15 where that person says something and you flip that switch, it's a difficult position. But I know from my perspective, I definitely don't want that person feeling that way. I'd rather you be calm and like, hey, officer, why'd you, and when I show up, say, Deputy Frank, the sheriff's office, this is the reason why I stopped you, whatever. And then you communicate. And for me, and I can tell you this from tons of traffic stops, you were respectful to me, have a good day. Slow it down, get that taillight fixed, whatever, have a good day. So we both need to come from a position of where, you don't want to have that fear, you don't want that escalation, and, cops need to do a better job, and the community also needs to help us out too. It has to be both coming together.
Where can people find out more about your bicep board? I have to give it a try.
It's bicepboard.com and @bicepboard on Instagram. So
I want to be part of a bicep board, right?
You got to grow a little bit more, but
Yeah,
you'll
you got
be on that board.
to have like 22-inch guns for that, right?
I got to get those peaks going. So that's the thing, is it definitely works the peak, puts that tension on the peak. Some people say, oh, genetics. Well, you can also find things that you can develop that peak. You can get that bicep board and you can hit that peak a little bit harder. You put a little dumbbell in between there, or you can go ahead and hit your you can do triceps. We have it's multi-use board.
Oh, that's
and
cool. Is it available yet, or not just yet?
We are going to be making it available. That's my business partner Pete with his giant guns, and we worked on it together, and this is the one of the finished products. And so right now we came out with the board. We're working on production right now.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'm excited to give it a try.
Thank you.
It's great working out with you today. Thank you so much for all your insight. Really appreciate it. If you want people to follow along with anything that you're doing, where could people follow you?
At bicepboard.com on Instagram would be great. And this is something we're starting to, or new business, young, trying to make, follow in slingshots in the Mark Bell's footsteps. So you blaze the trail, and we're trying to, follow in that.
Cool.
and get things going.
Awesome. Again, thank you for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank
Andrew,
you.
take us on out of here, buddy.
Thank
Awesome.
you, Mark.
Yeah, thank you so much, man. You answered a lot of good questions, and it was just great seeing your rational approach to everything. Somebody that got, point blank range, shot right in the chest. You would think, you have all of the reasons to be extremely bitter, and you're not. And I think that's really huge and important. And I think it was amazing the way you shared everything that you did with us today. So thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to be here. And thank you for that,
Mm-hmm.
recognizing that. Because believe it or not, that actually goes into some of that sticks in my head. I'm like, okay, why aren't you upset at, when you see somebody, say a Hispanic nature, that person, I have so many Hispanic friends, and I love being with them, and I don't, that, your brain has to function a certain way. You know what I mean? And it's like, why, for me, it's just about, I want to enjoy life. I want to surround myself with positive people. I don't want to waste time being negative.
Mm-hmm.
I almost lost my life, and that made me, just eyes wide open and said, hey, you know what? Tomorrow's not promised. So, let's live every day to the fullest and have a positive attitude. And that's something that, that's my mantra. So that's something that I stick with.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for checking out today's episode. If you like it, please reach out to us on Instagram at MB Power Project, or on Twitter at Mark Bell's Power Project on Instagram, at MB Power Project on Twitter. My bad. My Instagram is at I am Andrew Z. And Nsima, where are you at?
Nsima Inyang on Instagram and YouTube, and Nsima Inyang on TikTok and Twitter, Mark.
At Mark Smelly Bell. Strength is never weakness. Weakness never strength. Catch you all later.